Hello, this is Claire Howell from the Skagit Fisheries Enhancement Group. Today I'm going to be sharing an art activity with you in which we'll discuss the behavior and biology of spawning salmon. So, I'm going to start out with the male salmon. And I'm going to start out by just filling in some water right around the head here. And as I can do that, you can see this really pointed nose or snout of the fish. This is a characteristic spawning shape of the snout. This is not how the fish looks when it's in the ocean eating or any other phase of its life. So as I do this, think to yourself about why this male might have such a curved snout as well as such pronounced teeth. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and drop some color into here. Here we have our colors. I'm going to start out with this dark olive green color. Usually extends up at the top. Let's drop some of this in. Top of the snout of the fish. See how I'm being very careful not to drop the color into the nostril or into the eye. Alright, so maybe you've thought a little bit about the differences between the shape of the fish's head when it's in the spawning part of life than at other times in its life. And the color will also relate to that. So here we have the head of the male, and those sharp teeth are not for hunting, like how they would use their teeth in the ocean. Instead, they're for defending a territory and for competing with other males to access the female. So you can see here's the female's head, and she doesn't have that sharp pronounced snout or those sharp teeth, because her role, instead of competing for a territory or for access of a mate, she will instead be focusing on building the nest where they will lay their eggs. So, as well as having this nice olive green color, coho salmon will have some really pretty red colorations during spawning. And these colorations are different as well from what you would see when they're out in the ocean. So as you can imagine, these bright colors wouldn't be so helpful for camouflage. In the ocean, the fish are going to be a silvery blue color, which will match nicely with the open ocean water as they hunt for krill and smaller shrimp, fish, and forage fish, stuff like that, as well as avoid predators like orca whales. But here, once they've come into the freshwater and it's time for them to spawn, pretty much all of their body starts to convert into those spawning focus. So these bright colors will help the male fish defend and kind of make him be able to impress the female as well as intimidating other male fish. So we just got some colors in here. And yeah, look at those teeth. Alright, so down to the female. We'll do the same thing. Dropping in some water before we add the color so that the color can spread nice and evenly. Oopsie, I got a little drop there. I almost got the eye. So you can see I'm being especially careful not to paint over the nostril of the fish. And that's because I want you guys to take a good look at the nostril. So on coho salmon, the bright white nostril can be a helpful way of identifying them. It stands out pretty nicely when you're looking at them from above the water. And it also illustrates how important the nostril is for these fish. So, what do you think the importance of a sense of smell is for this phase of the fish's life? Alright, maybe you got a chance to think about it a little bit. So, sense of smell is actually how these fish locate their new spawning area. So salmon will return to the creek and the habitat that they themselves were born in. So these fish are going to return to the same area where they were eggs and then ultimately fry. And how they do that is by smell. So they actually have a very sensitive sense of smell, and they can identify the creek that they were born in by that sense of smell. All right, so I'm going to take a moment and let this dry, and then we can move on. Salmon build their nest in the creek, nests where they lay their eggs, and they use a particular size of rock. They don't use sand, because if sand is so small, it would smother the eggs, meaning that it would cover up all the eggs so the eggs couldn't get any oxygen, and the fish wouldn't be able to develop. They also don't use large rocks like boulders, because boulders would be so big that they wouldn't stop the eggs from flowing downstream. So you can imagine the salmon are spawning in a creek, so there's a current. The water's moving down the creek, so if there's nothing keeping the eggs in place, they'll just float down the creek with the water. So salmon lay their eggs in gravel. Here you can see I'm filling in gravel. And how they do it, the female will clear the gravel away with her tail, and then she'll lay her eggs into the gravel, and then the male will come behind her and fertilize the eggs. So all of that is a lot of effort for the female, and it will actually wear away the scales and skin on her tail. So a way that you can identify spawning female salmon after they've dug the nest is they'll have what we call flagtail, so a bright white tail. And those are actually the bones of the fish's tail that have been worn visible by all of her activity with the gravel. So she'll make the nice nest, and for salmon, we call this nest a redd. It sounds like the color red, but we spell it R-E-D-D. So salmon lay a pretty extraordinary number of eggs. If you've ever seen inside of a salmon that's getting ready to spawn, her entire body cavity is full of eggs, and she can lay thousands of eggs. So between 4,000 to 7,000 eggs. These are nice big coho salmon, so she probably would have laid quite a few. But of course, well, why do you think she lays so many eggs? Why does she put so much of her energy and resources into making all of those eggs? So yeah, there's a couple reasons. First, a lot of different predators will eat these eggs. So salmon eggs are pretty defenseless. She will do the best she can to lay them in a safe area, but even so, fish will eat them. If any of them shake loose, birds will eat them. All sorts of animals would like to eat these eggs. So she has to lay quite a few eggs because lots of animals want to eat them. And lots of animals want to eat the little fish as they start to grow and develop too. They're pretty small, they're fast, but still lots of other animals will try and eat them. So that's part of why she lays so many eggs. And then also, this is actually the only time she'll lay eggs in her life. So this is her only opportunity to lay all the eggs that she will ever lay. And that is because they put all of their energy into migrating up the river, and once they're at the spawning area, they'll lay and fertilize the eggs, and that is all the energy they have. So these fish will die after laying their eggs. So, one chance. She lays as many eggs as she can, and she lays thousands of eggs. What we're going to want to do now is give our salmon some more environment to live in. So we have the gravel, which are necessary for the redd, the salmon nest, but we also need to add some water, of course. So we know that salmon want cool, clean, and clear water. I'm going to go ahead and make sure my paintbrush is nice and clear, and my water's gotten really dark, so I want to make sure that my paintbrush doesn't have any black on it. And I'm going to pick up this nice blue which we're going to use to show that the water is clean, clear, and cold. So, as I do this, and I drop the watercolors in here, why don't you take a moment and think about how your actions can influence how clean, clear, and cold the salmon's water is. Go ahead and just spend a couple seconds thinking about that and brainstorming. Oops, that happens. So, keeping water clean. Obviously, the salmon need to have nice clean water so that they don't get sick. Any sort of chemicals could either make them sick or could even kill them directly. That can be an issue with stormwater runoff in cities. So something that you can do to help make sure that the water for the salmon in your area stays clean is to be really careful when you are around storm drains. Storm drains drain directly into the nearest body of water. A lot of people think that they go to the water treatment plant, but actually water that goes into a storm drain isn't treated. So anything that you let go into a storm drain near your house, like any sort of cleaning products, soap, anything like that, can actually end up and will end up in the fresh water around your neighborhood. So if you have salmon living in a creek near your house, or even in a river further down that your creek will flow into, they can be hurt when the water is not clean because chemicals have gotten into the storm drain. So, another important thing, of course, is to keep water clear. Now, salmon need water to be clear for a number of reasons, but mainly you can think about it like what makes water not clear would mainly be dirt. So if there's a lot of dirt in water, then it wouldn't be clear anymore, and that dirt, in the case of these eggs here, it could actually smother the eggs. So similar, we talked about how they wouldn't lay their eggs in sand. You'd have the same problem if there's a lot of dirt in the water. That dirt could come down and it could cover up the eggs so that they can't get oxygen anymore. Then also, the fish could have the same problem themselves. Since they breathe, they get oxygen from the water using their gills right underneath these gill covers. Then if there's a lot of dirt in the water, that could clog up their gills. It could hurt their gills, it could make it harder for them to breathe, and they could get sick, they could have trouble escaping predators, or they could even die from that. So, a way to help stop dirt from going into the creek is when you're walking along a path next to a creek, to make sure to stay on the trail. So that way, you won't accidentally contribute to erosion, which is where dirt, in this case, would fall into the creek from the land. And I'm going to do a little bit more detail work here in a minute, I think. Alright, so there's a little wash of blue to show our clean and clear water. And then we also mentioned that salmon need water that is cold. So, how do we keep water cold? In our area, one of the main things that keeps water cold are plants. Different sorts of plants living in what we call the riparian area. A riparian area is the area of land and the vegetation it contains that's right along the creek. Here is our completed painting. We have our male and female coho salmon, as well as their eggs, which they've laid and fertilized in the salmon's nest, which is called a redd, in the gravel. So now that they've been laid, the female is going to use her tail to cover up those eggs and protect them from any sort of predators and to stop them from getting washed down the creek. They also have nice, clean, clear, and cold water with lots of healthy plants growing in the riparian area. So this will be a wonderful environment for these eggs to develop in. So for our next lesson, we're going to look more at the development of the eggs, and we're going to see what happens next in the salmon life cycle. So I would love for you to join me. I look forward to it, and for now, have a wonderful day. Thank you.